noise!
Good evening. Do not attempt to adjust your device. There is nothing wrong. We have taken control as to bring you this special message. We will return it to you as soon as you are grooving. Welcome to station TIR, better known as Truth and Rhythm, with a very special giveaway. Sponsored by Modern Retro Radio at modernretrofm.com, you can win a free copy of Everything's on the One, the first guide of funk. Simply email info@funkandstuff.net with Funk Me in the subject line. Tell us what you love about Truth and Rhythm and include your mailing information. That's it, and your free book will be on its way. As a bonus, name the first guest ever to appear on Truth and Rhythm, and your book will be signed by the author. This is a limited time offer while supplies last. Thanks to Modern Retro Radio and all of the TIR supporters. Now, kick back, dig, while we do it to your eardrums. And me, I'm known as Scott Goldfine, alias Dr. GX, and my motto is, keep on vibrating to the rhythm of the one. Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm, brought to you by funkandstuff.net. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I'm your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine, musicologist and author of Everything's on the One, the first guide of funk. If you don't have your copy, get on over to Amazon and pick one up. You'll be so glad you did. Whether you're watching the video version of this at funkandstuff.net or on YouTube, or listening to the audio-only podcast version from providers like iTunes and Spotify, as always, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in the show. Speaking of which, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube. That's where Truth and Rhythm lives. All kinds of goodies. You'll get early premieres, and it's all free, so make sure you sign up. Tell a friend, tell family. Also get your official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff gear at the funkandstuff.net store. Cool stuff like I'm wearing right here. Truth and Rhythm shirts. Show your support and love of the show and also the musicians and the music that they represent. Also want to give a shout out to the Funk Exhibition Center and Hall of Fame in Dayton, Ohio, of which I'm very proud to be an official funk ambassador. Go to thefunkcenter.org to learn more and keep the funk alive. And now, with all that, it's time to get on with the show. Enjoy. I'm delighted to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership bassist producer Mark Brown, who as BrownMark was a core member of Prince's band The Revolution during their immense 1980s popularity. He also led his own protege band called Maserati, released several albums under his own name, and worked with many other well-known artists. Following Prince's death in 2016, he reunited to perform with the other original Revolution members and recently published his autobiography titled My Life in the Purple Kingdom. There it is right there. Hey, Mark, so glad to have you on the show. How are you?
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm glad to be here.
Outstanding. And where is here today? Where are you?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Fall's coming in, beautiful weather. So, yeah, I'm, good day, trapped in the house for 9 months, but, it's nice weather outside.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it too. I'm not too far away. I'm near Charlotte, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. Same kind of weather then, pretty much.
Yeah.
But you're a little colder.
Yeah, but it's been beautiful. I'm really enjoying it. So, as I mentioned, of course, huge fan, and those, who have followed the show know what a huge fan I am right from the get-go. And, I'm especially a fan of funk, so it's really a treat to have the bass player the bass man of the Revolution on who was responsible for that bottom, you know? So,
yeah. I
yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah.
And, reading your book, I enjoyed it immensely. And, what really struck me about it, among other things, is just how many common threads I felt personally, because we're about the same age. And even though I grew up in Los Angeles, so many like threads in it just I could relate to, music wise, and just, the things that I also saw with like racial things, and just so much of it rang true.
Yeah. That it's a significant part of my life. When I started writing this book, I don't think I could explain my story well unless I went back and showed people where we come from. A lot of people, they know bits and pieces about Prince, the Revolution, the Time, the Jets. I mean, you name it, all the Andre Simone, but they don't know a lot about our background. So I said to myself, I really want to go back to my childhood and show people how growing up in that environment, was the key factor in how we formed the type of sound that we developed.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I think is such a credit to the Minneapolis sound. It's just all those diverse influences that came in and just, combined for such, fantastic music unlike anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I'd like to do is talk about the book, of course, but also talk a little bit about your own music career aside from that. That's not so much in the book necessarily.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, when I was talking about common threads, Mark, I was especially thinking about reading the book when you talked about being a kid and being influenced by things like the Jackson 5 and even Three Dog Night. And I remember growing up with that same music, and how much it influenced me too. So that was a kick.
Yeah, I love Three Dog Night. That was my first band actually that I ever remember seeing on television. And it kind of blew me away to see how, because we had just gotten a television. And so it was really interesting for me to see people actually playing instruments, making music on television. It blew me away. I was just a little kid, but that's where it all started, with me that I was anxious, I was really, it drove me. Something about that performance. I can't remember what show. I think it was like a New Year's Eve special or something, but man, that locked me in. Really did.
I think one of the first records I ever had, was Three Dog Night Live,
Yeah, celebrate.
Yeah.
Answer the music, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. So it's funny because, people who don't know, they might not guess that a band like that would be such a big influence. But, there you go. But, they combined a lot of styles themselves. So,
yeah.
And then you also mentioned Let's Do It Again as a track that helped you learn. And that was one of the first 45s ever bought by the Staple Singers.
Yeah. What's interesting about that song is I didn't even know. I learned of that song because of the movie Let's Do It Again. I believe, wasn't it Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby and can't remember who else was in that, but man, that was a funny movie. And I just remember that bass line stuck to me. That doom, 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 doom. And then when I had the opportunity to meet Maeve this past February, that was awesome. I even started playing the song for her on stage. You got a kid.
That's great. Yeah, I want to say you got those stars right. I was thinking maybe Jimmy Walker was in that. I'm not sure if that was the one or not. But yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Well, yeah, like 75, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then, another thing that really struck a nerve for me was, you talked about growing up on the more serious side, without a real like father figure and how that sort of shaped you in your teen years. And, I had the same kind of thing because my father was there, but he wasn't really all there. And I didn't really have anyone to like, show me how to be a man and how to like, talk to girls and all that kind of stuff, So
I get it. I lived it. It was rough learning from the streets, you know. You walk in the streets and the streets start to teach you, you don't know what you're getting, you know.
And then, you know, you just pick up whatever your peers are doing, whatever foolishness that might be, and you just run with it.
That's it.
Yeah.
I remember being told the craziest things when I was a kid, you know. But I never had parents or I never had a father to really set me straight on it. So I just believed whatever I would hear, you know, and run with it, you know.
Yeah. So it's definitely gotten me in some questionable positions in life, but, you know, you learn the hard way.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I was floored when I saw or read that you hadn't really gotten serious about the bass until high school.
Yeah, that was that's interesting because, you know, I started out wanting to guitar, but because I broke the strings on it, I only had 4 strings. I mean, it took me long enough to buy the guitar, let alone trying to figure out how to put strings on it. And so Jermaine Jackson played 4 strings, so I mean it was a no-brainer to me. Okay, I'm going to learn how to play that way with just the 4 strings. And so I was really learning how to play bass because the fundamentals of the, you know, how you play it, for me, it was just 4 strings. You know, 6 strings didn't register anymore because everything was 4 strings for me for, you know, for a good couple of years. And then when I put it away, when I got in high school and I picked it up, see, it was like automatic. I saw a real bass and I picked it up and it was so natural for me because when I was younger, that's how I started. So it was interesting how I ended up playing bass.
It is interesting. I found it fascinating. It's almost like meant to be, kind of in a way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You're going to play bass. It doesn't matter what you think. Taking these 2 strings away, you're learning the bass. So that's kind of how.
And then you mentioned, you know, a lot of my heroes as your heroes, but why don't you just go ahead and state them for everybody?
Bass player heroes?
Yeah, yeah.
Man, there's a lot of them, but just to name a few from that time period, because like nowadays, I mean, there's tons of bass players that I just love their playing. But back then, yeah, definitely Stanley Clark, Jaco Pastorius, you know, Verdine White, Earth, Wind and Fire, you know, Mr. Marks from Slave, you know, these were some of my favorite bass players ever. I can't remember what was the group Pleasure. Can't remember the
Nate Phillips.
Yeah. Oh man, that dude was bad too, you know. So
Glide, that Glide riff.
Yeah, and the list goes on, you know. But those are Larry Graham. I can't forget Larry and Bootsy. Wait a minute, Bootsy was a huge influence for me. So, and so was Larry Graham. Sly and Family Stone. That whole, you know, I grew up in that whole time period, listening to that funk and the way he would rumble on the bottom. So, where a lot of my style came from right there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I feel like we were both blessed to come up during that time, you know, and when those guys were just starting to do their thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the book, you talk about how you first met Prince and sort of just a chance encounter, right?
Yeah, it was, you know, I had heard a lot about him, you know, because, you know, he was the talk of the town. Everybody, this guy from Central High School, he goes to North now. This guy from North High School, you know, he plays all the instruments and he has his album out. He's just this and that. And so, you know, the talk was already around town about him. I remember him, but I didn't connect the dots. I remember they played a high school prom at Central, and I was in the alleyway, and I'll never forget, whoever was on that stage, it was funky. And I was outside, I was a kid, I couldn't even get in, but I sat outside that back door in the alleyway, and I listened to them. And man, they were funky. And so when I met him, I was in a pancake. I was worked my way up from a dishwasher to a cook, and he was dating Kim Upshur, who was at the time a waitress. And I remember he walked in the door and she ran back and she said, she was all excited. And she told me, hey, you got to make this order special. There's somebody special out there. And, so I'm like, special? Oh, I want to see who this is. And so the obnoxious little kid I'm like jumping all over the counters trying to see who it was. And I'm staring at him and making him uncomfortable. But hey, I cooked him pancakes. That was the highlight, of my childhood, to be able to make pancakes for this dude, especially looking back, realizing that pancakes were a big part of, his story, and many stories that were told about him. So I got to cook it for him. So.
At that point, Mark, did he have the Warner Brothers deal already and any records out, or?
Yeah. That's when Soft and Wet was out. That's when I had first heard about him, and Soft and Wet came out, and I remember the song. I was driving down. I was driving at a very young age, but I remember I was driving down the street, and I heard, what was it? It was In Love, and on the radio, KMOJ, and I was blown away. I said, there's no way that this dude play all these instruments. No way. And so that's when I started really getting into Prince, trying to figure out what he was and what he was doing. And then as I progressed, as I got older, I started trying to follow his footsteps and do the same things that he did. I started working out of a studio in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and taking all my earnings, and I would spend it on the studio and work in this guy's basement. And so I was trying to follow the same path. So yeah, but man, he had the album out. He had the deal with Warner Brothers already at that time.
Did you sense that, there were a lot of guys just like you that were kind of inspired by him already locally and trying to kind of follow that path?
I mean, not really. I mean, all of us were trying to make it. That was the term, I'm going to make it one day. What does that mean? Not many of us had a clue really what making it was. We just knew we wanted to produce records, put them out so people could hear them. So going in the studio was the first step. Prince was so far in front of us. He was really far in front of me because, I'm 3.5, maybe 4 years younger. So, I was like one of the last of my generation of the Minneapolis sound to really be in a band and play that live music. After me, there were very few, like the Mint Conditions and, Grand Jury. There were a couple other groups, but as far as individual players, I was kind of one of the youngest of the bunch and one of the last of the group of musicians that came up in that time. They took music out of schools and things changed after that. So, I felt very privileged that I was even a part of the tail end of that. But I clung on for dear life, and I followed all those guys: Sonny Thompson, Andre Simone, Prince, and Rocky Garrity. I mean, I could keep going. There were so many awesome musicians back then, And so I feel privileged that I got to come up in a time period when these guys were at their best.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned 3.5 years difference between you and Prince, in Prince years, that's like 10 years, it's
yeah.
like.
Yeah. He was very advanced, very advanced. I mean, to even know how to go in the studio and get the drum sounds. I mean, heck, that cost me, a few $1,000s just to learn how to do that. I mean, so, it was, one song at a time in the studio for me, where he had the ability to go in there, he had met Owen Husney at the time. And I think there might even been, I think Peppy Willie had something to do with Prince. I don't really know the story, but I know he had really good people that got behind him when he was younger and kind of pulled him in and showed him a lot of ropes. Especially Owen Husney had a big, hand in how Prince developed in the studio. I know that for sure, just by hearing the stories. And I had the privilege of meeting Owen Husney later in years, and he helped me a lot with my songwriting, and then with my band Maserati. So, there was a lot of good people in Minnesota, ready and willing to help, us musicians out. A small group of us.
Yeah. So, I was just thinking Minneapolis versus Atlanta. It's a big chasm in terms of weather right there. How long have you been out of Minneapolis?
Oh, I think I left Minneapolis in 1996 or 97.
Wow.
Somewhere.
So
Yeah.
quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the book, you talk about how you got a very special phone call at one point, sort of like the call of destiny, maybe.
Yeah. That was we were playing at the Way Community Center, rehearsing. Well, I called it practice. Prince, he stripped me from ever using that word ever again. He said, that word is stricken. You cannot use that word around me. We don't practice, we rehearse. And but back then I was practicing at the Way Community Center because I was an amateur. And about 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, we got that phone call that, the janitor knocked on the door and said, there's a call for Mark Brown. And, the whole band's looking at me like, what the heck, because nobody knew we were there. We're at hours, we weren't even supposed to be in that place. And we're working out in the warehouse because our lead singer was one of the program, he worked there. He worked at the community center. He was one of the directors or something. And so, we kind of had a free place to rehearse, but no one knew we were there. It was impossible. And so, got that phone call. I walked down the hallway, picked up the phone, and I said, I was like, who is this? He's like, this is Prince. I was like, this ain't no Prince. Boom, I hung the phone. This ain't no Prince. What a liar. And he called right back. And I turned around, I looked at the phone, and I was just thinking to myself, this is like some crazy prank, or that really is him. And I picked the phone back up, and he's like, don't hang up. Don't hang up. This is Prince. And, and I was just sitting there in disbelief, because I was like, wow. So this is really Prince. And he said, yeah, I want you to audition for my band. And then I was really blown away. I was like, what? Because I'm thinking, I'm an amateur. I mean, you got bass players that could smoke me. Sonny Thompson alone. I mean, Sonny taught me and Prince. So I'm like, I shouldn't say Sonny taught Prince, but I know he taught him a lot. Sonny taught a lot of people in Minneapolis. But it was really interesting. I went back and told the band, I was trying to hide it from them, and they were like, well, who would be calling you this late? And I didn't want to say anything, and they kept pressuring me. So finally I said, that was Prince. And I mean, it was so quiet. You could just, everybody was in such disbelief when I told them that. And, the rest is in the book. I don't want to give it all away, but yeah, it stirred up a little tension, but life goes on. It was an opportunity for me. I was going to take it. And he had said he was going to pick me up. Have Bobby Z pick me up at the 7-Eleven. That's where I had worked at the time, at the little convenience store. I was like, how does he even know I worked at 7-Eleven? Even that kind of blew me away, because, I mean, nobody knew I worked at 7-Eleven. I don't even think 7-Eleven knew I worked at 7-Eleven.
Yeah, just spies or something.
Exactly.
And you were only 19, right?
Yeah, I was 19 years old. I just turned 19. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I was a young guy, man, and that kind of blew me away.
Yeah. It's funny. I was just thinking, Mark, about how many times people have probably hung up on Prince, like thinking it was not real.
Yeah, exactly. There ain't no Prince.
Yeah. So you got the gig, well, I guess it seemed like he had been sort of like following you and keeping tabs on you a little bit from afar,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I had heard that he had been watching me for a few months, several months. And I remember me and Andre, I was talking to Andre because I knew it was a toss up between me and this guy named Johnny, and to play in Andre's band. Because Andre was, had quit Prince, and so he was putting his own thing together. So that's who I'm thinking. I'm like, I'm going to end up playing with Andre. And so when he called me, it blew me away. It really did. But I went out there, and I think that audition lasts no more than 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. And he had me learn like 3 albums, and how do you learn 3 albums that fast? And then, you have to go into this audition, and it was just the three of us, me, Bobby, and Prince. And we didn't even go through half the songs. It was 10, 15 minutes tops, and we were done. He looked at Bobby, said, "I'll take him home." And I'm thinking to myself, you'll take me home? Now I'm nervous. I'm like, what in the world is going on here? Why are you taking me home? I know Bobby now. I want to go with him. And so Bobby gets in the car. He takes off. I'm like, oh, man. And he disappears upstairs, and he's gone for a long time, good 30 minutes. And he comes downstairs. And I was like, oh, man, okay. Let's see what he got up his sleeve. Comes down the steps, all dressed up. I mean, he was dressed up anyways. When he opened the door, he was dressed up. So now he's even more dressed up, right? Looks like a rock star even more than he did when he let me in his house. And hair was coming all down here, and he had black. I mean, he looked totally rocked out. And he said, "Let's go for a ride." And I'm just like, wow, okay, this is weird. Get in this little BMW. He had the biggest stereo system. I mean, I can't explain to you how loud the stereo system was. The stereo system was bigger than the car. We got in this thing, and he turned it on, and it was so loud. It had subwoofers. Now, I never seen none of this kind of stuff before, nor heard it. And I was just blown away, and he started playing me the Controversy album, the album that, I was coming in on. And he wanted to get my opinion and see how I liked the stuff. And I just looked at him and I said, man, this stuff is so different. But I remember I told him, I said, man, this stuff is going to go straight up. It's going straight up. I said, because it's so different. I said, people are waiting for this. They're going to love this. And I remember he told me that was the end of his contract. If this album didn't do well, that was going to be it for him. Warner Brothers was going to drop him. That's what he told me. And I was like, you ain't got to worry about it. This record right here, I said, this is going to hit, bro. And so he drove me back to my car at 7-Eleven and said, job's yours. He said, just let me know Monday. I was like, I don't need to let you know Monday. I can let you know right now I'm in. He says, no, I want you to really think about this. Make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Bobby had said that to me earlier when he picked me up. He's like, you sure you know what you're getting yourself into? And I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm a musician. Of course I know what I'm getting myself into. But then it kind of scared me because I was like, there's something I don't know. And then Prince says the same thing to me. So I was like, kind of nervous, but I was like, okay, I'll let you know Monday, but I can tell you right now I'm in. Yeah, that's how I got it.
Wow. Probably something that you don't know is that I was at that Coliseum Rolling Stones concert, and so I understand that was basically your first show, and I had Lisa on the show, and she told me then it was your first show, and I didn't know it until she told me that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was there, and it was unbelievable. And I was, a Prince fan from Soft and Wet from the get-go. And I had told all my friends, this guy's amazing, you got to check him out. So I was like this big, promoter of Prince among my, people. Yeah. And at that show, they were there mainly for the Rolling Stones, but I was telling them, no, this guy opening, he's amazing, wait till you see him. And then when he came out and what happened, I was mortified. And I was so pissed off at what I had seen. But just give a taste of what that was like for you, Mark.
It was scary, and then it wasn't scary. I mean, because I kind of knew. I played in little bar bands. I mean, I knew what a rough crowd was like. But excuse me, the Rolling Stones. I played biker bars before, so I was like, man, this audience is going to be rough. I've heard about the Rolling Stones audience, and so I was nervous going in a little bit. With the type of music we're playing and what I know is typical of a Rolling Stones concert. So I remember we went through this like field of white tents. I never seen anything like it. White tents everywhere. And we're walking, and we went to our tent, and I remember we were sitting around waiting to go on, and people getting makeup and hair and whatever, all that stuff they were doing. And I was just sitting there, felt like I was sucking my thumb, like, mama, because I was new to the game, and it was our time, and we walked down this flight of steps. I mean, it was like this huge flight of steps. It was almost like we were going to the Roman games, we were going to the slaughter. And you could hear the roar of the crowd was so loud. I had never seen that many people in one area. It was festival seating, so there was no seats. Everybody was standing. You were there. It looked like they were in there like cattle, just packed in
like
there.
90,000, yeah.
90 plus, yeah. And I was like, my God, this is ridiculous. And I remember we started playing, and it was good, Crowd was like screaming, and it was good. But somewhere in that set, it was a turning point. And I remember he came to me, because there was 2 days of it. So my memories I kind of meshed both days together because I don't really remember. But I remember he walked over to me and he said, we're going to change the song and we're going to play Jack You Off. I was like, no.
That one surprised me too.
Can't play Jack You Off. I said, no. And he walked off, and I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. It was already tense. And then, Bobby starts with the drums, and then he starts talking to the audience, and he says, this is what you do to your girl in a drive-in movie. I was like, no. I was like, no, you don't do that to your girl. Girls do that to the guys. So I knew right then, I was like, oh, this is going to be really bad. Man, I'm sure you know the rest. They would throw out Jack Daniel bottles. I got hit with a bag of chicken. My bass got hit with a grapefruit. I was dodging cans and bras, and shoes. It got really bad. And when he got hit upside the head with a metal object, it looked to me like a silver dollar or something. But I remember when it hit him upside the head, that was it. He was through, and he just left the stage, and I was like, oh man, I was like, what do I do? And then everybody was leaving, and so I just followed suit. That was one weird day.
And I felt like he even tried. I mean, that song was questionable, but I felt like he tried to cater to that crowd because he did do some Jimi Hendrix kind of guitar stuff. Yeah. And I was like, well, maybe I think he's trying to connect with them through maybe the Hendrix thread. But they weren't having it.
No, they weren't. I heard audio from the soundboard. Years later, we were playing Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad, and it was that intro. And I remember the soundboard, the engineer's like, oh God, we got to deal with another one. Here we go. I can't wait till he gets this crap, this crap is over with, out of here. So nobody liked us, not even the engineers. I was like, this is pretty bad.
Wow. Yeah, Mick Jagger was the fan, but yeah, it didn't make the translation, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
you know, I was. I'm sure you felt the same way. But I felt so avenged, if you will, when it wasn't much later. It was just months later when I saw you guys at the Santa Monica Civic as part of the Controversy Tour, and that show was such a victory. So close to where that travesty had happened, and that was just an awesome show.
Yeah. Isn't it weird? Like 360, man. It was a full turnaround, night and day, man. It's like, and he said that to me. I remember he was really embarrassed, and he was really nervous as to how I was going to respond to what had just happened. I'm the new guy, first show, and in his mind, he doesn't realize how famous he is. So he's looking at me, and he's like nervous that I'm going to quit or something. I'm like, dude, you're a superstar. You can get anybody to replace me if I walk away from this, But I could feel the nervousness in him when he approached me, because he was like, how are you feeling? And, that is not our crowd. And he just went through this whole, explanation of how different it is to play in front of a Prince audience. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew he was doing a lot of explaining to me, making a lot of excuses for what had just happened. And, what he doesn't understand is I wasn't going anywhere. I was in there. I was a soldier at that point. I was in there for the long haul. And so, he told me that a little bit after that our first show was going to be in Pittsburgh. And he says, you're going to see who our audience is. And yeah, I saw it all right. Pittsburgh, that stadium. That theater. That was an amazing gig for me.
Yeah.
That was the first time I got real fan interaction. I got to actually touch fans, and slap their hands. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I was like, oh. I tapped this one girl on the hand. They were hauling her out. She packed out. They hauled her out. You got to be kidding me. This is crazy. I wrecked her show. But
how challenging was it for you to learn parts like Let's Work and some of that material? And I love in the book how you talk about at the rehearsal, not practice, when Prince kind of kicked you in the ass, and from that point on you kind of knew how you had to proceed.
Yeah, more than once. It was we were rehearsing. We came back from the Stone show because we had not worked on a Prince show. I just learned certain songs for that Rolling Stone show. So now we were going into rehearsal for tour, for the Controversy tour. And so I learned songs the way I always learn them. You just kind of listen to the record and you're like, oh, okay, I got it. No brainer. I play by ear and I pick up really quickly. And so I went to the rehearsal and we were going through some songs, and I can't remember. I think we were playing Head or Let's Work. It was one of them. And I remember he just, made a roundabout. He was coming up from behind me. I didn't know where he was. I wasn't thinking anything else. And I'm like always looking down at my bass, make sure I'm playing the right thing. And all of a sudden I feel this sting right in my rear end. He took that pointed boot, bam, kicked me so hard. I remember I was like, oh, and I turned around. I was like, what was that? And I turned around and he was walking that way. So I'm turning around trying to figure out what just happened. And I was like, I know this dude didn't just kick me. I remember I was just like, did he just? No. Your mind's trying to dismiss it because it's like, that's impossible. This dude did not just. This dude is 5'2". I'm 6 feet tall, and I wasn't no little guy. I was like, there's no way in the world would he kick me and not know that I wouldn't just take the bass off and start scrapping with him right there, you know. And so kept going around, went back to his mic, and I just kept playing. I never stopped playing. And he made a round again, bam, and I was like, oh, hit me again. And you get hit down there. The first thing you want to do is drop to the floor because that hurts. But he kicked me right in the butt. He did not kick me underneath to where if he would have hit the sack, the scrotum, I would have probably hit the floor and been laid out. Because as hard as he kicked me, that would have been painful. But he kicked me like right in the butt, right up in there, right in that crack. And I just remember the pain, and I was like, this dude just kicked me. At that point, I wanted to fight because it was first instinct. You hit, I hit back. First instinct was to fight. But he came up and he grabbed me by the ear like this. Let me see, what ear was it? It was this ear. He grabbed me by the ear really hard. Like he's handling me like a rag doll. He grabs me by the ear, and he starts cursing in my ear, and he tells me to play the bass or I'll find somebody who will. And I remember, and then he walked off, and I remember, I'm gonna beat you. I'm thinking to myself, I'm in such shock. I'm like, I'm getting ready to beat up Prince, and something in me just, this calm comes on me. It was the end of rehearsal. It was the end because, I was pretty much done after that. And I remember I went home angry. I was really angry. And I told my mother what happened. And I remember my mom, she, in disbelief, she was just like shaking her head. And, but she got a grip on it really quickly. And she said, he's trying to break you. He's trying to find a way to break you from whatever it is you are. And she said that's the only thing it could have been. And I remember I thought long and hard about that conversation she had with me. And I said, what does that mean? And I started re-listening to the records, or to the tapes that I had of the music. And I went back to the drawing board and I said, I'm gonna really figure out how to play this stuff like him. So that's not an excuse, because I knew it was all about the playing. I played every song identical to the record. I mean, I copied it identically. I went there to the rehearsal the next day and I played, and he turned around and he said, that's what I'm talking about. He said that on the microphone. He said, no, that's what I'm talking about. And I was like, wow. Like, dude, you almost got killed. I mean, you could have just walked up to me and said, yeah, look, I need you to get out of your old head and play this stuff the way it's supposed to be played. But I had learned a valuable lesson that he was actually trying to break me from my old habits and in with the new so that he could teach me. He had to break me down to, strip me of my identity so that he could start to rebuild me into something that he saw me to be. And I mean, BrownMark, that whole image, that whole character came from Prince. My style, everything I learned because he broke me down. When he stripped me down to nothing, I had nothing to do but rebuild, relearn, and develop my own character. It's not like he had one-on-one bass lessons with me and said, this is how you do it. No, he wanted me to come into my own, but he wanted me to get rid of my own method of doing it. And so I remember a fan said to me just recently that you shouldn't use that name BrownMark anymore because it was derogatory, and he knew what he was doing. He was belittling you when he called you that. And I was like, no, he didn't. See, one thing that I know for certainty is he christened me with a new name because I was a new person. See, that's where that came from, because I didn't get called BrownMark for a good 6 months in. I had to earn that name. And then when everybody had a nickname, and that was the nickname that he gave me. And it was because I was now developing into this character that he wanted and that he was building. I mean, the dude was a genius. He's very smart, even with how he controlled his band. I mean, I don't knock him for nothing. I can say me and him got mad a lot. We fought a lot verbally. He almost got beat up a lot because there's some other stories that were pretty bad. But the bottom line was, it was my choice if I wanted to stay in that. I had every right to leave at any time. Nobody was making me stay there. Nobody said, that you have to sit here and take it. Mm-hmm. I wanted it that badly. I was on a wave of success. This dude was on his way up. I would have been a fool to walk away from that. And that's why to this day, I never look back on that whole time period and a lot of the stuff that happened to me. I don't look back on it negative. I look back on it as a learning experience because it made me who I am in life today. I'm a much better person because of it.
Absolutely. And when you talk about on that path, that controversy show that I mentioned, Santa Monica Civic, then seeing the next one, the 1999 tour that was at Long Beach Arena with The Time and Vanity, which was the full show. And that was incredible to see all three acts on one bill, before he didn't want The Time there anymore.
Yeah.
But
that's a story.
And then from there to go to the Purple Rain tour at the LA Forum, so following this whole trajectory of just bigger and bigger and bigger was just incredible. And I felt like I was like part of that ride because I had just followed it from the beginning, but, to actually be in that whirlwind like you were, is there any stories related to the 1999 or Purple Rain tours that you want to just share?
I mean, there's a zillion stories. Matter of fact, I have another book I'm working on right now. It's called After the Rain. And in that book, I'm touching on more detailed stories because there's so many. You can't put them in one book. This book was like a foundation to let people know who I was because I was always in the shadows. And that's what I wanted this book to, share. I wanted to share with people where I came from and why and how. This next one is going to talk more about those stories, but during the 1999 tour was a turning point for me because that's when I really found my true identity. I found out who BrownMark really was. And, after that point, I started carrying myself with a little arrogance, but I learned how to be a rock star. And Prince taught me well. I give it to him. I don't give myself the credit for that. I give it to him because he beat my behind. I mean, he showed me what it took to be that person. And it took a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication. And I actually became that person. And, one story I share in the book is when that day, that awakening, that day of reckoning, when I was depressed. I was sitting in a hotel room getting ready for the show tonight. We were in, I believe, we were in Michigan. I can't remember which city, like Ypsilanti or one of those small cities. And we were getting ready to gig that night, and my hair was just, I looked like something that just walked out of I looked like Don King. That's what I looked like. My hair was just, because I didn't know, nobody ever showed me what to do with it. He took me to the hairdresser and they stripped all my curls out. That was it. And never showed me anything else. And so that day I was sitting in front of the mirror and I was so broken, and because my identity was just, I couldn't figure out. I started to figure out how to play and how to act, but I didn't know how to look, and I didn't have that look. And I remember I went to Walgreens and I bought this. It was called a 9mm curling iron. It was a really skinny curling iron, And I bought it, and I remember I sat up there for 3 hours, one strand at a time. I curled my entire head, and it looked like Shirley Temple's. I mean, like,
Kind of like that first picture I showed on the cover, right?
which one?
The cover shot, right?
Oh no, that's when I had it together.
Oh, okay.
But even before then, it was longer than that, but it was really it was completely straight. So I had to figure out how to curl it, and I curled it, and they fell. The curls just dropped, and I was like, oh man, this is a disaster. This is horrible. And so I, ran my hands through my hair like this, and I was out of anger. And then I remember I looked up, and it was a curly afro. And I was like, oh, I like that. That's kind of cool. Put my sunglasses on. I was like, oh, I was like, this is it. I remember I went to the gig, and I remember he looked over at me, and he went, okay. I was like, what? No counsel, no nothing. But I think he finally started to notice I'm coming into my own now. See? And the whole time he was kind of just waiting for me to do that. He was waiting for me to develop. And, I got to tip my hat to him. He didn't want a clone. He wanted BrownMark. He wanted me to find myself. And I did. Ever since then, like on the book cover, that's how I started wearing my hair.
Well, and that was one of the charms of the Revolution, was just how varied, the whole band was.
Yeah.
And diverse. Is there a particular track that you used to play, or maybe and you have done nowadays with the reuniting of the Revolution for those shows, that is the most challenging for a particular reason on the bass?
Nothing's challenging. I mean, for me, the kind of bass player I am, I'm a very rhythmic player. I'm not technical, I can't do all the scales and runs and all that. I've never been that kind of bass player. I'm a groove player. I feel what I'm doing, and
it's that rumble.
Yeah. That's my feel, and so all the songs to me are really easy because it's Brown style. Prince gave me my freedom. That's one thing I really liked, is he never came and took my bass and showed me a bass part. That just did not happen. He was always looking at me to see what I was going to throw at him, because he liked the way I did bass and drums. I'm a drummer first. That was my first instrument, and then became a bass player, and so he liked the way I put bass and drum together. So I didn't have that problem. And so when the Revolution got back together, it was so easy for me to just go back to what I was. And I'm even more skilled. My skills through the years have developed. You don't forget. I actually got better at what I do. And so it got to a point where now the Revolution came back together. It became fun. It was really fun, creating even more rumble on the bottom. It was to a point where when we first started gigging, I remember Bobby Z and Wendy used to have a fit, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, there's too much bass. Can we do something about the bass?" Because I had subs, I had everything. My junk was so loud that the PA could be off in the front, and you'd still hear me coming through the audience. And so I used to laugh about that, but they used to complain about how loud and that rumble on the bottom. And so we did a compromise. I turned it down a little bit.
One notch. We'll turn it down one notch.
Yeah, one notch. I made it tolerable for them.